Hello. Oh, there we go. All right. Good morning. I almost said good evening, but good morning, everyone. My name is EJ Johnson. I'm coming all the way from the great city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Yeah, always from New Orleans. And thank you, Candace and Dickie, for putting on this amazing event. I've known them both for years. Candace and I go way back, so it's beautiful to see this from fruition to idea to really what it comes to now. And so we have our first panel. So we're gonna get to talk to some folks, hear their stories, their journeys, and get some good advice from them as well. And so if they can go ahead and come on up, we have Tron, who is the founder of Tronzai Media and co-director of Pittsburgh Community Market. You can sit right there. Ivy Hall, who is a small business development expert. Christelle Parm, founder of Macon Black Tech and chief creative officer with Ham Design as well. All right, feel free to go ahead and sit down, you all. And yeah. Oh yeah, you want to. Is Jamaica? Oh, Jamaica? Yes, Jamaica. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. And Jamaica, please come up. Yes. Y'all, please forgive me. All right. I think we might need one more chair. So thank you so much. Okay. So really quickly, a little bit myself. I am a content creator, film director as well, and I work in tech in at the ends of tech, media, and marketing. And so I'm excited to talk to you all, as I know this is a lot of the space that you all are in as well. So I think the first things up is I would like to hear from you all in terms of a little bit about your background. So tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you do, and I'll just pass the mic down.
All right, and the last shall be first. Okay. So of course, my name is Jamaica Render. By day, I'm a UX designer, all things tech, branding, creative, you name it, I do it. My company is JLR and Co, where we specialize in UX design. Primarily, we've been working with education entities, which is segues to my nonprofit, where we focus on women and girls and just making sure that they're whole individuals. And currently, we're working on an education tech app. Um, yeah, I need an NDA to go further, but that's what we're working on.
Hey, good morning. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Tron Banks. I have my own media production company called Tronzai Media. I actually have a film festival next Saturday for anybody who's available to attend that. So I also am a founder and co-director of Pittsburgh Community Market. We're located at Pittsburgh Yards, right along the Atlanta Beltline Southside Trail, and we give space to minority-owned business, small business owners to sell. So we come up with curated events, festivals, things of that nature to draw the foot traffic to that space. So the small businesses they can capitalize off of that foot traffic. And some of the curated events looks like I said, a film festival. You wouldn't normally see that at an outdoor market. We also have things like the Nia Fest, which is this actually Saturday. The Nia Fest is the festival of purpose, and what we're doing with that is the thing for this year is full steam ahead. So it's science, technology, engineering, art, and we're doing money management instead of math. So our market is really community centric. We're helping guide the community through this development process that's going on at Pittsburgh Yards, and making sure that they're included, and uh, just bringing them along for what's about to happen over there. And that's basically what we do.
All right, beautiful people. Good morning. Awesome. So my name is Christelle Parham. I am actually from Macon, Georgia, home of Otis Redding and Little Richard. Okay. So what I do is I wear two hats. So my husband and I are tech founders. We work with healthcare and social impact led organizations to help them remain HIPAA compliant, while also with the social impact organizations, we help them develop data driven initiatives to best support the communities that they're serving. And also, as tech founders, we know how important community is. So we started a community organization back in 2019 where we work with early stage founders, helping them develop tech-enabled solutions that are serving our community. So lastly, with community being very important, and journeys in community tend to feel lonely, we're opening a spot in January of 2024 right in the heart of downtown Macon to best connect digital nomads to local entrepreneurs.
Well, good morning, and those are tough acts to follow, so I give it up to my fellow panelists and fellow cohort members. My name is Ivy Hall. I'm a business development executive. Excuse me. I've been in banking and lending for 16 years now, and so for the last 7 years, I primarily work with entrepreneurs, small business owners to help them gain access to capital through multiple different ways. But essentially what I do is a lot of financial literacy, but it's actionable financial literacy to make sure that business owners know how to position themselves for funding. It's not just putting in an application. There are several steps that are required to get the best funding, as well as to make sure that you can tell that story so that people actually do want to make that investment in you. And so that's what I truly enjoy doing every day.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think that one might be out. Thank you all so much for doing the introduction. And just really quickly, feel free to be thinking about questions you may have for the panelists, and we'll hopefully have a few moments to ask questions at the end as well. So thank you all for telling me your stories. And so what I'm hearing is a lot around production and tech and finance, working entrepreneurs. And so something that I'm curious about, especially when thinking about Black and brown communities, is your origin stories, or how did you get into these particular spaces and industries? So tell us about what led you into the actual work and kind of give us a little background to that.
Okay, so education is something that I've always had a passion for, starting in undergrad, and I'll just speak from the point of where I got seed funding and how I fell into the tech side of things. And so, with my nonprofit, like I say, we're focusing on the impact for women and girls, especially those who have been through trauma, primarily those who struggle with mental health issues. And so, when you look at the pandemic, we saw a lot of things emerge that we were educated on very quickly on the things that we fell short on. And mental health and access was one of those things. And so I actually got into UX design because I wanted to create something. I wanted to create an app that would help tackle what it is that I'm trying to tackle because of my own issues. So I am a trigger warning. I am an attempted suicide survivor. That happened in the pandemic. And so taking my own story and finding a way that that can be spread to others who look like me, who have experienced things like me, but making that in a way that's accessible for all. So that's how I got into UX design as well as the tech space.
Okay, well, my story, I was going to Georgia State and I fell down a rabbit hole of things, but I'll kind of go into detail a little bit. Like I said, I was going to Georgia State 2016. I was taking up film, which I'm a film major, and I needed a minor. So I remember sitting in the counselor's office. She was like, "Why don't you do this?" And it sounded like something I was already doing. I had an internship at Radio One at the time. Didn't really like it. I was doing red carpet events, dealing with celebrities. Just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. When I started my minor in real estate, is when I found out about the master plans of development that were happening in and around the Beltline, and I just started doing my research. I was taking real estate and development classes, and I had a lot of developers, like actual developers in my class, and they were talking about their projects. So me just wanting to figure out what was going on in the city, I started doing my research, and I wanted to figure out what was going on my side of town. So I literally, it's so crazy to saying this, but I literally was driving around, the signs that have a land lot for sale. I was going around calling those numbers and just talking to the folks and seeing exactly what was going on. And that led me to Pittsburgh Yards 2016. I started going to the planning meetings, and that turned into us having breakout groups, as they call them. Those breakout groups turned into an actual entity, which is Pittsburgh Community Market, which I founded. And the rest is history. We just started doing the work. And and getting more involved in the community?
So for me, I laugh sometimes because I to actually tell myself if I were to ever explain to my 5 to 7 year old what do I actually do, like they would be like, "What the heck is wrong with you?" You know? Because for me, what drew me really when I like to think deeply a lot. Growing up in Haiti, like my neighbors were the first aspect of a community I ever experienced, right? So when I was younger, after everyone came out of school, did their homework, we actually sat outside in the neighborhood and no cap, as the young people say. We actually told stories, right? We connected. Sometimes we ate dinners with our neighbors and things like that. And as I was navigating entrepreneur, and also my I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. Like all my mom's siblings are entrepreneurs. So I actually knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what it was going to be. Going as I got older, working in the healthcare sector as an innovation consultant, and we always, like, a lot of times when we got projects, we would always scout health tech startups from outside of our community. So it would always be like other parts of the world, other parts of the country. But I was like, wait, why can't we do this locally? So if you've met me randomly in the street, I've probably told you that I lived in Macon and I'm really happy to be in Macon. So I consider Macon my community. And I think about the importance of just making sure, you curate safe spaces where people can really be themselves, and when it came to the work that I was doing, I also wanted to create community where people also felt safe to develop their ideas. So that's how I ended up where I am.
All right. Well, I'm from Greenville, Mississippi. And so I spent most of my time there. I went to a HBCU in Mississippi as well. I majored in communications. I started off majoring in like biology. And by the time I got to physics too, I was just like, no, I'm not doing it. So I went in and I talked to my guidance counselor, and I just went over some things, and I felt like communications would fit me. And anybody who knows me knows that I love to talk, so it does. So anyway, once I graduated college, I was a news reporter for a little while in a much smaller market because it's in Mississippi, but I was a news reporter. But most of my family had gravitated towards Memphis. And so my brother said, they were just like, just come up here, XYZ. So I moved to Memphis. And shortly after that, I ended up starting in banking. So I started in banking in like 2007. That was right at the almost tip of the bubble. So I've seen a lot go on throughout the banking and lending climate. I've seen several changes, collapses, all types of things. So anyway, that's where I started in banking. But once I had that position, I went from being like a regular desk side representative into a branch manager probably within less than 2 years. And that was just from my ability to sell and my ability to lead. And so I really just had a knack for banking. And so I did traditional retail banking for about 10 years. And then I crossed over into the CDFI space, and that's Community Development Financial Institution. So there are banks, you have traditional banks, there's several different, financial institutions, but CDFIs are specifically designed to pour back into the community to make sure that business owners and people within those communities do have better access to funds and things like that. And so that's where I really found my passion. And so all of that experience kind of merged into me knowing that I wanted to make sure that I could present actionable financial literacy steps to business owners as well as to women and minority communities as well.
Thank you all so much for sharing the story. I know Mark and I were talking earlier about the power of storytelling, so being able to hear your stories is good. And real quick, shout out to Greenville, Mississippi. I started teaching in Greenville, Mississippi, so come on, Delta. So yeah, Mississippi Delta. So good things come out of Mississippi Delta. Absolutely. And real quick, and so as we're thinking about for folks who are here or those who might be streaming, the industries that you all represent, as we're talking about tech and production and things of that nature, what are some barriers, particularly as Black folk, that you've seen in these spaces? And so some stories to talk to us about that. How did you navigate those barriers? And as other folks might be interested in these spaces, they can also be thinking about this as well.
Does anybody go first?
Working in a community, there's a lot of barriers, especially when you're working in a community that's currently gentrifying. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknowing. So as a market, we had to deal with a lot our first year, and we did a lot of community engagement. Hearing some of the people's stories, how they're losing their homes, how people are landlords are kind of forcing people out of the neighborhood. It was really a gut check year one to even see if we wanted to keep doing this, because we knew year one we weren't going to be making a lot of money just by looking at the neighborhood and where it was at that point. We literally had people who were sleeping behind buildings and walking across the street to our market. And how can you sell anything to somebody who was just sleeping behind a building? So a lot of I would say mentoring, a lot of talking to people, being part-time psychologist to folks our first year. Um, that's what we were doing in year one. And fast forward to year three, it's more of how can we empower the community to be able to not only be a part of our market, but to get rid of some of those fears, and know that they have a seat at the table, and doing that through our market. So I might have got a little bit off of the question, but it's just it's dealing with it's so many things that goes into a neighborhood and a community and protecting it, and we try to do all of those things, but we at some point realized that we couldn't do all those things, so we try to empower other people to do those things, like fresh food access. We literally, our first year, we're trying to be farmers. We're not trying to be farmers this year. We're looking to connect people who already have farms that are up and running into a community that's underserved and doesn't have access to fresh food. And that's just one story. I could go on and on about how we're helping protect the neighborhood and put parameters around it. So when the development comes, the neighborhood is somewhat protected, and what that looks like is helping with historic preservation, helping with different community groups that lead the way in having a voice in the community. So those are some of the things we do outside of like retail and selling, is just being an advocate for the community.
Okay. All right, we're fighting for the mic. So for me, like one of the biggest things that I think about, although we're in the tech space, we're people first, we're human first, and technology is a tool, right? One of the best case studies that my husband and I learned a few years ago was when we signed our very first big contract. All right, so we had to do a community event for across for all the middle Georgia counties. It was a it was an event that crossed every sector in middle Georgia. It was exciting, we came out with all our cool processes, all the cool gadgets. We pitched it to our client. They were like, yes, let's do it. And then the event happened. It was a great event, by the way, but what it made me realize was you can have all the best practices when it comes to the technology. If people feel unsafe with the tools that you're developing, is it even worth it? So right in the middle of an event, we kind of like had to create more human touches to best connect the people that we were serving, so that it was not just technology servicing them to run the event smoothly. And that was transformative for us, not only because we had a pulse on how people felt around technology across all sectors of middle Georgia, but being able to quickly pivot allowed us to best support our community how they needed it. So for me, I think one of the biggest things that I learned as we're growing within our company is to always have a pulse in how to best listen to what your customers are telling you. And then even like fast forwarding to when we ran our first accelerator program, one of the best comments that I had from one of our cohort members was, "You said this was a safe space. I do not feel safe." And that was like so fun because I live in a smaller community, right? So it's always easy to like, have your ears to the streets, sometimes people don't like having hard conversations, right? So this person, she is a valued person within our organization because she constantly tells us when things are not okay. And we live in the bless your heart part of the United States of the world. So we're always going to bless someone's heart and not have the hard conversation. But for me, when she said that, it meant way more to me than someone that's like, "This is great. This is great." So being able to create a space where people can confidently tell when things are not working is so valuable.
That's such a good point. I could piggyback off of that and try to tie in my point, but I can say early on in my career, I was somewhat of a drifter because after college, I was just an adult. So I was working, I was making money, and I was partying. And I enjoyed that. So I enjoyed that. But once I got to the next chapter, instead of being a drifter, I had to really figure out who I was and what motivated me. And a part of that is figuring out, what does my voice sound like. I'm a baby child, and so I'm very much a go along to get along. Unless something like really bothers me, I'm gonna probably say, okay, I can find something. I can find the positive in any situation. But then I had to get to a point where I was okay with expressing the negative, whether it's during somebody's business presentation, because sometimes you don't want to be the loud. I think for me, because I was always, number one of very few women. I was always very young, very melanated. And so I never wanted to be the loud or the aggressive Black woman. That was just like, I still face that in my head sometimes when I'm in certain meetings. But I also had to say, am I being authentic to the points that I want to raise? And so learning how to assert myself in those right situations, learning how to make sure that I was advocating for myself. But not only that, in the financial industry, the ideas that I'm bringing to the table are helping to advocate for the people who don't have access. So it's very, very important. If I have to go against the grain, I have to do that, because if you are in a BIPOC community, and it's unfortunate, some people are like, I don't represent all. No, you don't represent all Black people, but sometimes you do carry their voice in certain spaces, and you have to. That's a privilege. It's not a burden. It's a privilege. So realizing that that was a privilege. And also, again, I have 15 years of banking and lending experience. This is all I've done the majority of my career. How can I use my privilege and the access that I have to make sure that people who look like us in this room have fair access to capital? And just another point, like working in retail banking, you will be in banks and communities. The people who come in who live within those communities can't get qualified for a loan. But then I have a call sheet of people who live in the better parts of those communities, and I'm getting asked to call them to do a loan. Those people, they don't need the money, they don't want the money, but the people who actually need it and want it, need some financial restructuring and coaching, they can't qualify for it because they don't fit in that credit box. So then I had to charge myself with, this is what I've been giving. How can I parlay this into something bigger to make sure that I'm carrying those stories into the tables and the places and the boardrooms that I have access to?
Yeah, I think I have a comment now. Okay. So yes to all of that. But for me specifically, I think because I am African American, I am a woman, and I come from Greenville, Georgia, an incredibly small town. I think for me, the things that have to be like issues for me or kind of like setbacks for me is when people see me and they figure out where I'm from, they kind of give me the thing of being underestimated and undervalued. And so when you walk in those rooms, it's like they want to shortchange you. They think that you will just accept that. I am a very quiet person, and I like I say, I'm from a small town, and you can put the zip code in, and it's like, okay, yeah, we can try and get over on her. I know specifically one of the first contracts that I won for UX design and marketing. It was with a countywide school system here in Georgia, and I gave my bid, and we literally went back and forth because they thought that they were going to get this incredibly low bid because I was Black, I was a female, and then I was from this small town. However, then you start dropping your resume and your facts. But it's sad that we're still there because I was able to reach out to another vendor that was also bidding on that contract that was Caucasian and a male. And he was like, no, I didn't have that issue at all. And he was bidding well over what I was bidding. And so I think those are things that I know myself and other founders have to face, being Black and a woman and from a small town. So, yeah.
Those are some powerful things that y'all share with us. And so I have one more question, then we'll open up. Maybe there might be a couple of questions in the audience. And some of y'all were getting to this topic, especially, Ivy and Jamika, y'all were talking a little about, but especially being that a lot of y'all come from, places, and you are in spaces now like that folks are thinking about, like that trajectory, right? Like, we can be real for a second, like coming from small towns, coming from Haiti. So when we think about obstacles that Black and brown folks are facing, and it might be folks in the Delta, in these places as well, what are those obstacles, those systemic obstacles that that folks are facing, whether it be trying to get into tech, trying to get funding? We know that's the issue with venture capital. And then what are some ways that you see as solutions to really addressing these things and making sure that our folks are getting into these doors and having these opportunities?
Yeah, we can start down
Don't be quiet.
Okay. I would say the first and foremost is exposure. Exposure. It's the same thing with financial literacy. You can only make a quality decision based on the level of knowledge that you have. If your level of knowledge is here, this is where your decision making will be. So the more that you cast a wider net, the more that you expose yourself to what venture capitalists are looking for, what do they need, what industries are up and coming. It's the same thing if you're looking for financing. What do I need? How can I be best prepared? So education and exposure. Being okay with being in a room where maybe you are a small fish. Maybe there are multiple people who are more qualified, but what can I learn? It's not the time to shrink down. That's the time when you become that sponge. And you all know when a sponge is dry, it's super tight. When you put the sponge in the water, it opens up. So as you're exposed to these different things, be open, have your ears ready, make connections, definitely network. But again, reading, being responsible. So like I mentioned before, I had my years when I was a drifter. It was a lot of fun. After you come out of that season and you know who you are, what you want to do, now it is on you to be the driving force of your life. How much do you need to read? Who do you need to be talking to? Do you need mentors? What type of financing, what type of people do you even need to be around in order to really achieve that success? And to your point, like me and Jamika, we actually laughed that she's from Greenville, Georgia, and I'm from Greenville, Mississippi. But like two extremely small towns, like just full transparency, all of my grandparents picked cotton. Like, no, they weren't slaves, but that was a means that they had to use to earn money during their childhood and adolescence. Another full disclosure, my mother and father also did the same thing as children. No, they were not slaves, but in the South, where we grew up at, that was a means where they made money. So I'm not that far removed from things that are in our history. And so knowing this is the history, but this is what I want to do. Our history doesn't captivate us. It's something that we can use to allow us to be that momentum to take up space in these new rooms. I feel like because I have that history, I have a totally different perspective on every room that I enter. And that is a privilege. It's not something that holds me back. So figuring out, even like, I love the fact that Jamaica always shares her story about being a suicide survivor. Being able to tell our stories, the things that maybe somebody would say you shouldn't be proud of, but saying that with confidence and saying this is a part of my history or my past, but it's made me and shaped me into everything that I am today, and allowing that to be the driving force in your life, and also allowing that to challenge you to be accountable. Like, accountability is very powerful. It takes discipline. We were just talking about that, to be accountable. But be disciplined with your life. Be disciplined with your time. Be disciplined with your gifts. Be disciplined with your voice. Be disciplined in the spaces that you take up. That discipline is going to really help you see way more fruit than anything else. So
Business revival. Yeah. So being in Macon, one of the things that I had the pleasure of, like, being in a small town or a small city is actually a gift. I don't see it because I've lived in South Florida for most of my life and things of that sort. So when I moved to Macon, I loved it, because it's an introvert friendly town. So what it allowed me to do is learn my local landscape, have a pulse on what's happening in the government level, in every sector, so that I can see what the gaps were and how did I show up with it and what role was I filling in that space. And the thing about it is, culturally speaking, a lot of times in the tech culture, I, I associate a lot of these cultures. I always say they tend to be cultish, like startup culture, tech culture, where you're like, there's always something that you want to mimic, well, not I don't want to, I have a little Haitian revolutionary living inside of me. I want to disrupt everything. But yeah, so um a lot of times people are like echoing, you want to be more like Silicon Valley or things of that sort. I don't see life through those lenses, because I think that every city, every space, every sector brings its own culture, and you want to create something where it the community sees themselves through. um on Sunday I was on a different panel, and where other people from other communities were asking why our downtown is so different from other communities. And what we ended up sharing was, because from the inception, people have learned how to build community amongst themselves. So like the healthcare culture, they go have beer at night and play trivia together. Like every sector has its own community downtown. So as we grow together, it's people find their places there. So usually, as you're fulfilling a gap within your market, you want to be able to find what part of the what role do you play within that community, and you fulfill it.
I'm just piggybacking on community. I think where small businesses, I don't say fail, but I feel like small businesses, especially in the city of Atlanta, and minority businesses, we show up to the table last. Most of the time, the plans for our neighborhoods are 10, 15 years in advance, and we show up when the thing is built. By the time the thing is built and open, it's already 10 years of planning. So we really need to be doing our due diligence and finding out what's going on in our neighborhoods, what's coming to our neighborhoods, what laws, what uh, opportunities for funding are coming down the pipeline ahead of time, so we're able to position ourselves to receive those funds and those opportunities. And I'll give you an example. When I was doing my research in 2016, and found out about Pittsburgh Yards and what they were going to do over there, it was mainly knowing ahead of time that got me in the position that I am in now. Like, I knew that they were going to receive a $27 million grant from the government, the new markets tax credit. So positioning your business in a space where the government is going to be funneling tons of money. I would say now, looking around at Atlanta, to position yourself as a small business, I would be looking at areas like Bankhead. They're pouring $40 million into the old Bowen Homes project. So it's going to be opportunities there. It's going to be opportunities by Greenbrier. Some things are coming down the pipeline as well. But just seeing those areas that we live in and drive by these dilapidated buildings and things of that nature every day and don't think twice about it. Somebody is holding that building or that space, and it's usually some money coming down the funnel somewhere. Most of the time, we're trying to figure out how to do all the things ourselves with the little money that we have. But what I've learned, people are not using their own money to do these things, and we could be doing the same things. But we have to be planning. We have to have our plans tight, and we have to know how to present them when we have the opportunity to present them to be the benefactors of a lot of the things, the opportunity that are coming to the city now.
Okay, well, I'm going to piggyback off of a little bit of everybody. So I think for sure, definitely always being open to learning, like Ivy said, and getting out and getting connected. I never, it's the education lover in me. There's always something that you can learn. And like Ivy said, when you go in those rooms, I don't care how many connections you have, go in there like you have none and get connected. And also build that discipline of just getting up and being in the room. And I just say this from me, I'm not gonna keep hashing on it, but when I was in the mental space that I was in, it took a lot for me to start getting up and going out and networking. But I knew that I was passionate about this. And if I wanted to make the difference, if I wanted to get the funds, the connections, and get the word out, I was going to have to build that discipline to get out of bed and get to those rooms. I didn't have to know everything. I didn't have to know everybody. But at least if I made one connection, that one connection can make the difference. And when it comes to learning, I don't care if you come across an opportunity, a fellowship, a certificate, whatever it is, if you have the opportunity to partake in it, take it. Because there's always going to be something new that you learn. I know before I even got in the fellowship, I had completed a certificate with Cornell in women's entrepreneurship. So a lot of the things that I learned in the fellowship, I already kind of knew, but I went into the fellowship as if I knew nothing because I was becoming that sponge to absorb all that I needed to absorb. Because I know with my company becoming officially woman-owned, certified as a woman-owned company, they want to know what makes you qualified to run this company. So I can say I've done this fellowship, I've done the certificate, I've been in this leadership program. They want to know those things, and then some of them even start to ask for references. When you're looking for funding, they're asking for references, and you never know who is in the room. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was in the room with 2 venture capitalists who are on the exact same path that I'm looking to go down to become a venture capitalist. And so I didn't know that they were going to be in that room, but because I was there and I was open to it, I was exposed to that. And now I have mentors to make that connection who have walked the path that I want to walk. And so always be open to learn. I don't care how much you know, always be open to learn, always be open to connecting.
Wow, Chriselle, would you say this was a revival going on up here? Yes, indeed. That was powerful to hear from you all. And so, things that I want to just recap as I'm hearing is one, you don't have to necessarily know everything, but getting in those spaces to learn, which is critical. I'm also hearing about the power of owning your story. I think that we bring a lot in diversity when we think about whether we come from small towns, we're from the deep South, we immigrant background, but owning your story and how do you use that when you go into those spaces to add to that diversity. And so I just want to thank you all so much. I know you were at time, but thank you all so much for participating on this panel. I want to encourage y'all to please connect with these folks. I feel like we just got a master class in a number of different topics, so be sure to connect. As Jamika mentioned, is power in knowing, being in spaces with folks and seeing where your journey and their journeys may be able to connect as well. And so feel free. I think the restrooms around the corner. There's some snacks, but I think that we will be transitioning with a couple announcements shortly. So thank y'all.
No? Yeah. I'm gonna get out of the way because I don't.